Welcome back. Following the accusations and counter-accusations of lack of due process in the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, there's a need to go back to the laws, especially the Act setting up the NNPC. I spoke to a few lawyers on the provisions of the Act, the powers of the Minister of State for Petroleum, the powers of the GMD, and what the law advocates when there is a clash between the powers of the two.
The NNPC Act from '77, as amended, does not provide or prescribe in detail the relationship between the GMD and the minister or the Minister of State. It will simply say, as it does, that there should be an NNPC board. The chairman of the board is the Minister of Petroleum Resources. It will tell you the members of the board. The group managing director, of course, is one of the members of the board. It's as simple as that. It does not prescribe daily relationships, does not prescribe how they should interconnect with each other, and certainly does not tell us in detail what governance rules should apply between those parties. The publicized row between the Minister of State and the GMD is very unfortunate, of course, because these are two leaders in our industry, in the oil and gas industry. Now, the issue is this. What does the law say? Well, I think that's what people want to really know. You know, you hear a lot of interesting things, people backing one candidate or the other. We in academia have no candidates. We just look at the rules and what do the rules say. I'm concerned about the governance failure. That's my own first key concern. How did governance fail to the extent that it's a public row, one, especially in the most important industry in the country? Two, the row, if we're not careful, can escalate and get out of control. So the relationship, we go back to what the rules say. There should be a GMD on the board. There's a Minister of Petroleum. The problem first starts with when the president decides to wear two hats. The hat of the executive president of the Federation and Minister of Petroleum Resources. Then you have your junior minister, who is the Minister of State. Now, the president appoints the Minister of State to be chairman of NNPC board. And the board, the job of the board is to manage and supervise any company. It's common sense. So I'm concerned when the board can be ignored or the board can be overlooked. It simply makes no sense in terms of corporate governance, because there's a good reason why we have a board, there's a good reason why we have a CEO, and why the CEO is not also chairman of the board. Initially, when Dr. Kachuku was appointed as both Minister of State for Petroleum Resources as well as GMD, Group Managing Director, I was concerned. It's poor governance to have two powerful jobs like that in the same person's hands, uncontrolled governance, basically. Now, what Baru was saying, the GMD, Dr. Baru was saying, is that from what I've read, and those NNPC adverts in the newspaper, so I assume it's correct, is that the approvals process for contracts is through the NNPC tenders board. And then as long as you get your permission from NNPC's tenders board, then all you need is either the president in his executive capacity or the president as the Minister of Petroleum Resources. And then possibly, or the Federal Executive Council, the FEC. That's what the NNPC is arguing. That in fact, the board of the NNPC has no business with procurement and tenders and what have you. And the only interest there, and the approval process has to do with relationship with IOCs and what have you. I would like to see the specific documents that actually itemize this. Because the legislation that we must always go back, the founding legislation, the NNPC Act, says nothing about asking the board to only supervise in these aspects and not supervise other aspects. It does not lie in the mouth of any other documents to change a piece of legislation. If there is a policy document, if there is a circular or anything that goes against this act, Act supersedes, of course. So it concerns me also that they said they got their advice, not from their own internal lawyers, but from the Bureau of Public Procurement, hereby dragging another government agency into a dispute. How on earth would the BPP advise that the board of the NNPC is an irrelevance on certain issues when this goes contrary to the express provisions in the acts founding the NNPC? I am concerned. I think most Nigerians are.
Another senior lawyer speaks about the powers to award contracts and the limits of the GMD's powers.
For contracts to be awarded, of course, Section 7 also talks about Section 6 also talks about the powers to award contracts. But the MD cannot award contracts beyond 5 million naira without reverting to the president for approval. And of course, if the president is not available, who is the person that you are supposed to revert to? Of course, that person should be the Minister of State for Petroleum. Recall that the complaint of the Minister of State, Ibekachukwu, is about contracts worth $25 billion. And he says he's not aware of contracts up to $25 billion. Whereas, in fact, the board of NNPC cannot award any contracts, which is more than 5 million naira, without reversion, without going back to the president, the vice president, and of course, for you to now do that as MD without the permission or the approval, as it were, of the board, of the head of the board, who is the chairman, I think that is absolutely wrong and unacceptable.
A senior advocate of Nigeria who weighed in on the issue concludes that the president would have to speak and give clarity on the proper position of each person.
We all know from our experience and practice that the Minister of State has minimal role in those ministries where you are a Minister of State. Once you have a substantive minister, Minister of State only functions in accordance with the will of the substantive minister. It's like having the deputy governor and a governor. The deputy governor only becomes very relevant when the governor says he wants the deputy to do certain things. So it's the same thing. And under the NNPC Act, it is the Minister of Petroleum Resources who is the chairman of the NNPC board. And we are told that, oh, the president has ceded this to the vice president. And the allegation was that, oh, minister says, oh, the GMD doesn't come through me. And the GMD said, no, I don't have a duty to come through you. He's the chairman of the board, and the president is the chairman. You get my point? Because he's the substantive minister. But like I said at other occasions, I see the issue as unfolding. And what I said at the beginning is playing out now. It appears the matter has been rested one way or the other. Whether the issues raised have been addressed is a different thing. But the matter has been rested by the actors. At the time I said the president is the umpire in this matter. Until he says what he wants to say, is then we'll know where we're going to go. The president has said nothing. The combatants themselves have sheathed their sword. You see at a point, sometime last week, both the minister and the GMD were at a function talking about oil. 2 days ago, they were with the vice president, and I saw their pictures taken together. So, you know, that's the way Nigerians do their things. Probably we'll leave the substance and then we'll address the frills. But then, that is our country. But I think fundamental issues were raised. I'm still expecting that the president will one day come round to clarify positions.
Interesting thoughts there, but what do you think? Please send in your views and comments on any of the issues we've discussed on the program today. If you missed any part of it, you can find it in past episodes on our YouTube page. I am Shola Shayeli. Thank you for watching.